What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Wrangler, and today we have another fixing episode of Ragnarok. So I have a rear wheel bearing on the driver's side that needs to be swapped out, but also I need to go get some new bolts because I hate the ones that are on it. They're reverse torques and they strip. Go get some new ones and get them swapped out for like a hex. So stay tuned and we will be going through the process today. There we are. Faca fasteners. So yes, we're now going to do the wheel bearing on the rear driver's side area. So what do you got to do first? Take off your tire, and then you got to take off, if you have a spacer, the spacer, and then you got to get your axle nut off. Okay, so sometimes your spacer will get stuck. You can either grab a rubber mallet, something, spray it with like WD-40, get it loose. Personally, don't have any WD-40 or a rubber mallet, so some cardboard and the persuader, and just try and break it loose a bit so you can get it off. If just tapping it doesn't work, grab yourself a pry bar, something thin enough that you're going to get it in between your spacer and your rotor without damaging any of them. That's the major thing. You don't want damaged components. So once you get it in, just little tap taps, and then you should be able to go around, tap it off a little bit more to the other side, and really you should at this point be able to just pop it off just like that. Simple, done. Okay, so here is the lock nut on here that I was telling you about. You got to get these little, you can't see, these little pins in here. Got to get them bent out of these holes so you can get your axle nut off. It's very simple. So now that we have the pins pulled out of the axle nut, we're going to take off the axle nut. So just like so. See if we can get it. Get our breaker bar on. Just like that. Comes off. I'm not going to reuse this one, mainly because I do have a brand new axle nut to go on instead of this. If you look at it, it's all bent up and just looks like garbage. So now we're going to get the thing I hate the most out. Allen key lock that holds in your rotor. I kid you not, that was the easiest I've ever had this done. Like, it came so loose, so quick. When you're doing this, you need to take off your caliper. So, your caliper, right here, if you can see, has some nuts that you need to take off. There's a few there, and then there will be also a few down in there as well. Just to get off the caliper, so there'll be one here, one down there, and then there should be some at the back to get the caliper actually off. But we'll get to that point in a second. Let's try and get it off. So we got those bolts right there, and there's one just like right there. I gotta get those off in order to take off that. We got the caliper off, the brake pads. Now it's time for us to take off the rotor. So let's just see if we can get it. And when you're taking off the rotor, be careful because you are going to want to reuse this. If you are, be careful with it. If not, whack it. Beat the crap out of it, whatever you can to get it off. I have to reuse my rotor, so I'm gonna be gentle about it. See if I can get it. So, if you can't, get again, piece of cardboard, and just lightly tap it. And you want to try and break it free. So now that you have your rotor off, just make sure there's no dents or anything in it. Take a good look at it, and then put it somewhere safe where it's not gonna get knocked over onto the ground, scratched or destroyed. So for me, I have a piece of wood over here. I'm just gonna put it on top and leave it to be safe. So now that's out of the way, you gotta go. And then you gotta make sure that you can get your CV axle free. Okay, so we have the CV loose. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to take off the reverse Torx in the rear. So you may have an issue where you get a bolt like partially through and like partially undone, and then it just wants to stick and seize for you. So all I can suggest at this point is literally just hammer on, heat, and lubricate. That's all I can suggest. All right, so I got one out. Have to sit here with the heat for a bit, like about like 5 minutes, and then I wrap it out. Kinda at a different location at this point. It's a lot later in the day. I needed elevation to be able to get the actual bolts out and to be able to swing a hammer properly to get it on. So I only needed elevation because I have so much rust and salt from living in Canada. This is something that you can do without elevation. Now we're going to heat up the bolts again, get it off, and go from that point. We're already 2 down, 2 more to go. Onto the last bolt, and just heating it up to get it out a lot easier. So now that we have all the bolts out, the worst part is done, literally. So now we just gotta get your wheel bearing separated from your knuckle. But from there, you just gotta get your CV loose enough that it plays, has play in it. So now you just gotta get the wheel bearing separated from the knuckle. There's a few ways you can do this. You can get the proper tool. You just have to remove your CV axle. It's actually like a wheel bearing puller. For me, I just go up to where the wheel bearing actually meets up to the knuckle. I'll find that line where it meets. Just so you know, it'll be very rusted. So like if you come here and look, right there is where they meet. As you can tell, they're very rusted. So we're gonna hammer it and try to separate it. So now that you got your wheel bearing out, but make sure everything in here looks good. Clean out any rust you see in there, just clean it out, make it look good. But this is what a bad wheel bearing looks like. And shouldn't be doing that, or shouldn't sound like crap. Wheel bearing, nice and new, shiny. Comes with a bearing cover. So see that? But look, no play, smooth. That's what a wheel bearing should sound like. Really, it sounds like nothing. Just a nice, gentle glide. But yeah, so when you do that, you're gonna get your hub, wheel bearing. You're gonna mount it, marry it with your CV. And then all you gotta do is just line up your lines like so. And yeah, so when you get your new bolts, fancy new ones, couldn't tell you why they're blue, not a clue, but it will do. So you take your bolt, go to the back of your knuckle, find the hole, and then you're gonna put it in, and you're just gonna screw them in, and then you go your cross patterns to here, to here, to here, to here. Make it simple, make it tight. And again, I'll put all the torque specs at the end of the video, so make sure you watch the whole entire video so you can get the torque specs for this. When you're doing it, I always find when you're putting in your bolts, always try and get them as hand tight as you can first before you go to using any power tools, just because you can end up stripping, and then you can also end up making your day a lot worse, especially if you rethread something. So when you have finally got all of them in hand tight as best as you could, take your trusty dusty zip zap, and you're just gonna go up. Hopefully you can get it on, and then just go. That you have everything in, you're gonna come around here and you're gonna see that you have your bolts through, and then again, put your axle nut on, put your rotor on, put your brakes on, and then you go from there. I forgot to mention I took off my dust cover as well. It's just a 10 mil socket that's easy to take off. So, next thing you're gonna do, you're gonna grab your rotor. Don't be like me and let somebody help you take it off and drop it. But you're gonna get it on. There's a little screw hole right there. You're gonna line up one of these small little holes with that hole there, because that, it's kind of scary, is for this little screw. She's nice and snug. And then that just holds that there, so it makes it easier for you when you put in your lug studs. So then you take your brake pads, and you got 4 holes. You gotta line up these 2 at the back on here. And again, it goes like this. 2 big points go onto the outside. And then what you're gonna do, you're gonna line up behind, and there's 2 bolts that you're gonna put in, and then you're gonna go from there, and then you'll put on your caliper. So we're gonna take this screw right here. I'm gonna go into this top one. You gotta get it lined up. Once you got them in, it'll start to thread in. So it's threading in, which is nice. So I just usually get first few threads in, and then I'll go to the bottom one right here. Make it simple. You put that in there, and you just gotta thread it in, line it up, thread, thread, thread. Okay, and then that's it. Okay, now that you got your brakes on, you're gonna add in your caliper. Take your caliper, you're gonna line up these 2 bolts in the top and bottom, and then you're going to just finagle it on. And by finagle, I literally mean finagle. So make sure your brake pads are in there. This is also a good time to tell you that it's a good idea to put your Jeep in service brake mode, because it holds open the rear caliper so you can get it back on with much ease. If not, you can get a tool that will just twist it, but it's much simpler just to go into the Jeep. Done. So we're gonna put the bolts on, and then we're gonna torque them down. So you're gonna take your bolts, which are a 1/2 inch, and then you're just gonna put them in. You're gonna line it up with the actual brake pads. Hand tighten them in like normal. You don't wanna over tighten things, you don't wanna twist things, you don't wanna expand the metal. Because when you actually over torque things, you end up mushrooming out the end. So basically you're putting tension and stretching this all the way, and it then makes the interior weak, and that's how you snap a bolt. Science. So there's 2 ways you can tighten these ones. You can use a 1/2 inch, or you can get a Allen key. Not too sure which one it is, I forget. But you can also do it that way if you round off this edge. So now that you have everything on that you need to have on, you need to have some resistance to put your wheel, everything else back on, so it has something to hold against. So at this point, you take your Jeep out of the service mode, which is just going into your menu on your radio, and then you go into settings, under brake, and then you click service brake. Good, and then you just put your axle nut back on. And then once you get it on the ground, then you torque. Finally, once you got everything, your spacer torqued down, what you're gonna do, you're gonna put your wheel on, and then you're gonna put the Jeep down, you're gonna torque it, and then you're gonna go far and rip there, bud.
You're gonna put the tire from there, up there, right?
Hmm?
Tire from there, all the way up there.
Yeah.
You're like, get lifting.
So once you have everything down, and you've torqued everything, got everything to proper specs, all you have to do is just take your handy dandy Jeep cap, go over to your wheel, and then just done. So now that we've changed out our wheel bearing, now that you know how, I'll explain more in the end of it. I'll give you all the torque specs like I said, and I'll give you all the tools that you'll need to do that. Like, subscribe, do the little notification bell thingy, ting ding, and also, if you have any ideas for videos that you want to learn, want to see, want to know, message us. We are literally here to help you guys, so just let us know. Have a good one.